Welcome back, everybody, to Health Reboot Summit. We have another wonderful guest, Dr. Vera Tarman, and we're going to be continuing to talk about food addictions and how to overcome it. So, Dr. Vera Tarman is a medical addictions physician, author, and speaker, and she's also a recovering food addict who has maintained a 100-pound weight loss for more than 12 years. She's author of Food Junkies, Recovery of Food Addiction. And with her website, addictionunplugged.com, she explains how a sugar and flour addiction can be as treacherous as an addiction to alcohol and tobacco. Well, let me welcome Dr. Vera Tarman. I'm so pleased and honored to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Great. So, Dr. Tarman, I would love to start with your own story and how did you overcome your food addiction and, I got on that healthy pathway when it comes to your weight and your health.
Okay, so I guess my story, I want to make it really short because there's lots to say, is that in my in my teens and actually probably more in my early university years, I was like everybody else, all other women and probably many men. I thought that my weight was too high. And I look at pictures now and I go, I don't know what I was thinking. But then I thought I was too big and I had to go on a diet. And I went on a diet that was super extreme. When we're young, we just go overboard. I have a bit of a history of addiction in the past, so I think it was addictive behavior. But it was like most of us. I just went overboard. And what ended up happening was I got into what many people develop is a kind of eating disorder. I started to restrict far too much, and then I started to develop what we would now call bulimia. And that wasn't a term that was used much in those days. It was just starting to be used. And I struggled with that for a very long time. And then it wasn't actually until many years later, I kind of learned to control myself, but it wasn't until many years later when I got into the addiction field and started reading about, just how you define addiction, that I thought this is an awful lot like the way that I eat. And so I did a trial of just doing addiction tools, stop the triggering food, and found that it made all the difference in the world. But as I kept trying to tell people who would say, don't be silly, you can't be addicted to food, I was quiet and I would try to go back and eat sugar, and it never worked. And it wasn't until I found research, and then now, especially now, I'm just bringing it up to today, colleagues who support this model, that I thought, I want to support this model, and that's why I'm on the bandwagon to talk about it, because it made all the difference in my life. And one of the messages I really want to spread to people is I didn't have to worry about weight. I focused on addiction. That was my story. And as a result, my weight came off without my focusing on it. And so that I lost like virtually 100 pounds, and I'm actually 105 pounds less than my top weight. And that's been over now probably 15 years by now. So it's possible without, slip sliding and whatnot. It's using the addiction model.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yes. So I would love to get into the addiction model and what food addiction is. Just want to say, I'm so glad that you're talking about it. In this summit, we're really emphasizing that, your dieting and your extra exercise, this is not the pathway to lose weight or to have healthy weight and be healthy. So just focusing on the numbers and the scales can be so counterproductive and can lead to restrictive behaviors and even enhanced addiction. So thank you so much for bringing that, from within your story. So let's get into food addictions. And what is food addiction? How can we be addicted to food?
Okay, this is the question that even doctors ask, and they, with a dismissive attitude of "Don't be silly. How can you be addicted to food?" I think that almost everybody will agree that the food industry, because the culprit is essentially the food industry, who makes foods, processed foods, especially refined carbohydrates and sugar, adding it to everything. They make foods that are addictive. And I think even all of the naysayers that don't believe in food addiction will say, yeah, it's true. They do that. That's their job. They're trying to make a profit, and they make foods that are addictive. But that doesn't make a food addict or a sugar addict. Just eating addictive foods, it means you're going to eat addictively while you're eating the food. And then, you ate a little bit too much, and then you stop and you put the food away and you carry on with your life. But what happens is and here's where the concept of addiction comes in, is that if you're in an environment where you're exposed on a constant basis to an overabundance of sugar, or anything that is far more than the body can tolerate. And sugar, we have receptors that are designed to like sugar, because we're animals, we need sugar, we need glucose to feed the brain. And I know that people will talk about, well, ketones are fuel for the brain too, but you have to become keto adapted. You have to be eating just proteins and fat. The body prefers default mode glucose, and we've got it in our environment all the time. So we need glucose, and our body likes that. So hence, if you have a food industry that knows that, it's going to make foods sugary, so you're going to buy their product over somebody else. But that's only to a certain extent. And when I talk about food addiction or sugar addiction, I don't mean fruit, I don't mean vegetables, I mean refined and added sugars, like candies and cakes and basically all the stuff that we eat, junk food. And that is too much of what my body can handle. And so then my receptors, the neuroreceptors, the dopamine receptors, will actually adapt to that overabundance. And with the term that we call tolerance, you're taking so much and you're getting overwhelmed because you like the feeling. But the body doesn't want it. It's too abnormal. It's going to try to make it back to a normal experience. So that neuroreceptors adapt by downregulating. Anyway, you become tolerant. So now I really like that candy bar, but now I need 2 to get the same effect. That is the beginning, the first stages of food addiction. If you get off the bus now and stop doing that, which is what I'm hoping many of you, we can teach you to do, then you're not going to be in any trouble. That happens all the time. But if you stay on the bus and you keep eating, well, now not 2 chocolate bars, but 3, and now you're going to have, a Starbucks latte, and now you're going to have more and more and more. You're staying on that bus, and more adaptation occurs, which is addiction, until you finally you have a condition that's called addiction. And it starts with sugar addiction, and then it morphs into something else. So that is a biological change that's happened over time and exposure, thanks to the food environment. And I'll just finish this answer to this question by saying, this is why it's so frightening that kids are eating this stuff, because it takes time, but they're starting in day 1, like infancy, even in the womb when mom is eating this stuff. People in my generation were eating. It took a lot longer than it's taking our youth today, who are now becoming not only diabetic as children or teenagers, but also food addicts as children and teenagers.
Yes. And it's really terrifying, to be honest, to think about it. And the truth is, if you read the labels, sugar is pretty much in every processed, everything that you buy in the store.
Yes.
Or some other form of sugar, high fructose syrup, which is even worse. So I think I just want to say, because I cannot stop saying that, we have to read the labels. Yes. And become aware of them. So you mentioned sugar, but what are the other addictive foods and other addictive substances that we find in foods?
Okay, so usually it starts, like the universal is sugar, because our brain is, like I said, primed for that. And it's also primed for fat, but you usually have to add the sugar to make the fat addictive. You have to add sugar to salt to make it addictive. Even though those are flavor enticers, they don't often, it takes a lot for them to become addictions in themselves. But add sugar to them, and oh my God, that's like the perfect bomb. Basically a bomb of some sort. So the perfect bomb, there was a list of sort of the most addictive foods that, and you'll notice all of them have sugar in them, that was made, and you can easily find it on the internet, but it was substantiated by research. This isn't just somebody who drew up a list. It was actually substantiated. And guess what the perfect bomb is? Chocolate. Chocolate covers all the neurochemicals. It covers the dopamine, which I alluded to, serotonin, especially endorphins. And it's got salt in it. It's got cream in it. It's got protein and salt. It's got everything. But you can eat a lot of it because of the sugar. I was actually talking about the next one, which is ice cream. Chocolate is number 1 because it's got the endorphins and the dopamine, and it's like super, super rich. And then ice cream is number 2. The next one, this really shocked me, um, just that it would be number 3 was French fries. I knew that French fries are addictive, but I thought, yeah, but that's not really sweet. That's more savory. Similarly, cheeseburgers in the top 10. Like, how can cheeseburgers? Well, because there's enough salt and sugar and fat, and even though there's protein and other stuff, you go to particular stores, which I'm not going to mention, but it's the big chains. They have they're much more abundant in sugar than you think, even in the patty, the patty itself. And then, of course, there's all the condiments on top of it. So they end up being super addictive. Next one, and here's where people go, this has got to be okay because it's not sweet. Pizza, that's number 4. Pizza is like super addictive because it's all refined stuff. And it's a lot of flour, it's a lot of sugar. It's a problem. So sugar is the universal. And by the way, the next one that is almost always as triggering is flour. And of course, what's pizza? Yes. Big doughy things of bread dough. It's like naan if you go to an Indian restaurant, anyway, it's the, or I guess like Greek food, even like their I forget what it's called, but anyway, okay. Cookies is another one. Potato chips or some kind of form of chips. Cake. These are the top 10, and not to no surprise, I'm sure everybody here will admit that they've struggled with one or all of these.
Yeah, but it boils down to the fact that the sugar is actually added to all those commercial foods. If you go to a chain and get French fries, they're not really potato. They sort of a mashup of sugar and other additives and unhealthy oils. And that's how they become addicted, because they have sugar. And then flour is number 2. It's another addictive substance, and it comes, to summarize, like it comes from just a natural response of the body. We like glucose because it sustains life. So naturally the body will be wanting it, but because we have such overabundance, we get in trouble.
You've summarized it perfectly. And then if I can just add another piece that you've asked me what the most addictive foods are. When a person has, remember I was talking about the development of food addiction as a condition, as you're more further adapted because of the overabundance, eventually what can happen is that this isn't early days. This is if you're on that bus for a long time, the food addiction bus to disaster, diabetes and whatnot. You can become addicted to foods that you were not addicted to before. Like, more things become addictive because you're exposed even to okay things, but more than we would normally be. You can become addicted to carrots. Like, how's that possible? And eventually it can become an addiction to just the eating itself, which then you have this concept of people who are grazing throughout the day. They just need to be eating, because the magic of dopamine, because it all translates to dopamine, the neurochemical of dopamine. That's basically the key neurochemical to understand addiction. That is just the anticipation of pleasure. So even if you've learned, because you've cut out everything else and all you're eating is carrots, like the person who's going on some kind of fad diet, and then finds that they become addicted to the food that they're think is safe. You're hungry, you look forward to something, and then you develop a kind of false appreciation for something that you would normally not have been born with, or just the act of eating. So the end stage food addict is often volume addicted to foods that they weren't in the past. Like, the list goes longer and longer. Like, the bus doesn't stay at the same stop forever. It carries on. That's when we need talks like this to educate people that, you might be thinking it's not so bad now, but that's just now.
Okay. Yes, it will get worse unless we do something about it. So that's a great segue to, if you're on that bus, like how do we stop?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. So people will say, you can't be addicted to food. You can't be addicted to, Coca-Cola. Come on, don't be silly. But then when you ask them, okay, are you prepared to stop? What do they say? What? No way. How will I live? How will I get through my day? How will I get through my evening without my nightly treat or my, whatever it is? Then you start seeing the reactions that are pretty much like, wow, this person has an attachment to their ice cream treat at night that is like the alcoholic with their bottle of wine at night. I need it to fall asleep, or something like that. So there's two things that you need to know about getting off this bus, as it were. If you think it's an addiction or it's developing an addiction, the first thing you have to do is identify what's the trigger that's keeping you on that bus, that's keeping you wanting to eat more than you would normally say, I should stop. I bought the box of Girl Guide cookies. I don't know if you guys have them where you are, but we have them. You couldn't possibly just have 2 or 3, which is what the instructions say. You want the whole row, and then what the hell, let's have the whole box. And you might say to yourself, I'm going to stop, and okay, fine. But if you stay on that bus a bit longer, now if you want to, you want to stop, but you can't, because the dopamine is wanting more, and you've already changed the brain so that the dopamine is now more dominant. We call that obsession. But now to get off that bus, you're going to have to stop. But stopping is going to hurt, because you've changed to the point where you can't just stop like you could have 2 years ago. It's going to hurt a little, because you're going to feel essentially deprived, angry, agitated. I have to stop, but I don't want, I'll stop tomorrow. This is all addictive behavior. And in the addiction world, we called it withdrawal, post-acute withdrawal. So you have to identify your food. And then number 2, appreciate that as you're stopping, you will go into withdrawal. The most minimal symptom is just a feeling of deprivation. But the bigger symptom is, I can't sleep. I can't function without. How will I get through a hard work day or a hard work week without having my treats and my rewards? This is all withdrawal. And I want people to realize it's a time limited episode if you actually identify the right triggers and stop. Because guess what? This is a biological phenomena, and when you stop, the brain is going to go and it's going to start registering, oh, I'm not getting those cookies, that pop, that whatever it is, that I'm going to feel awful, but I don't want to feel awful, and my brain doesn't want me to feel awful. It's going to actually start resetting the clock, as it were, re-uploading those receptors that it had down-regulated. It's going to upgrade them so that eventually I'll be fine again. And that doesn't take as long as we think. If I say to somebody, you got to quit sugar, they're going to say, that's not possible. How can I do that for the rest of my life? Actually, you only have to do it in terms of the pain of it for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then after that, you have to still stop, but it won't matter to you. You'll be fine, because you're over the hump. So that's the first thing, is recognize the trigger, stop. We call it abstinence, stop the trigger, and then recognize there's going to be withdrawal and get lots of support. The other thing, so there's 2 things you need to know. And the second one is, if you don't want to stop completely, there you are, you're saying, I can't possibly do it. But Vera, is it okay if I can just have less? Can I cut it back? And I'll say to you, okay, if you can, and not feel deprived, and not go back and have more, 2 weeks later, fine. Then you're not on that bus to the point where there's been, changes. But most of us, by the time we ask for help, by the time we realize I got to stop, we're already invested in, and it doesn't work that simply anymore. Like, I've been sugar-free now since more than 15 years. I know if I were to pick up again, I would be back into my food addiction and sugar addiction within months, if not weeks, maybe even days. It would be back. So the people who want to cut back, if you find that that takes more than 2 or 3 weeks, you're just prolonging that withdrawal, prolonging, and it's going to be painful. And of course it's hard. So if you are truly addicted, it's got to be abstinence. And then if it's taking longer, it's because there's still something that's keeping you addicted. It's probably flour. It might be sweeteners that you're using instead. There's all sorts of things that you can become, you don't even know, but if you keep wanting them, that's a sign.
Okay, so basically you're saying that the best route is to stop entirely, and it doesn't take as long, it may take about 3 weeks, but it will be painful. It will be, our brain has to rewire. There's really no way around it. We can't just sort of pretend that there is an easy simple way to get out of addiction. So how do we survive those 3 weeks
Yeah.
or 4 weeks, whatever
And
it takes?
I want to say that you're going to stop sugar forever, but we have a tool in the addiction field, and this is one of the ways that we survive, is we say you just have to do it for today. But let me just say before I get into the actual tool, you do have to stop forever, but the pain will only be 2 or 3 weeks. That's the key piece.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
After
Of
that,
course.
after
Thank
that,
you.
it's like you ask a smoker who's quit smoking, do you want to smoke again? Like if it's been a few years since they quit, they're going to go, no, I don't want to smoke. It smells. It makes my breath bad. My clothes stink. No way. You're going to feel that way about sugar. I walk by, a cake thing. Certainly, if I dwell on it too long, I'll start remembering. That's called euphoric recall. But my first reaction is, oh God, thank God I don't have to go through that anymore. Like I'm relieved when I see it. It's not like, oh, I want this. It's thank God I'm not there anymore. So how do we do it? Well, first of all, just naming that this is not you with poor willpower. This is you with addiction. This is you with this biological phenomena that happens to everybody. It's just that you happen to be somebody who's more aware of it. That's already number one.
Yes.
Like just to be aware of it. So you can go, okay, that voice that's saying to me, you know what, it was a hard day. I'll start again tomorrow. That's just the addict talking. And that chatter, that mental chatter will go down in a few weeks, but it's going to be with you every day. I can't believe it that this is not an addiction. You're going to have all sorts of stuff in a committee in your head, along with society who says, don't be silly. It's all addiction talking. So just know that. That's the first thing. Of course, abstinence, and then knowing that. Then the second thing is, if the pain continues, what are the other hidden triggers? And, we know sugar, that's the universal. Flour, I don't know if you're talking about the glycemic index with some other speaker, but, any kind of carbohydrates eventually process down into sugar.
Yes.
And refined carbohydrates do that very quickly. So bread, which is almost sugar, like maybe in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, ends up being very addictive to people. But some people, and muffins are addictive. There's where French fries can be addictive. But it might be that somebody can tolerate a few fries because they're not as, I don't want to say damaged, but altered, or their hormonal system and their neurochemical system, basically the adaptations that I talked about, are not the same for everybody. And so one person can eat a potato and another one, no way. Some people can eat a lot of fruit, and others say, I can't eat that much fruit because that will just get me off and running. So you have to identify what's your trigger and cut that out. So that if the pain is continuing, there's something that's keeping it going. Okay, so those are the sort of two key pieces. The next one that's super important is you have to plan, and we call it plan, prepare, protect. Inevitably, society is such that it doesn't support a person who believes in, I don't want to quit sugar, or I'm not eating carbohydrates or refined carbs. They can, oh, come on, you can have a little bit. And so you go into a restaurant and they'll say, I'm sorry, this is all we have. Those of us who are committed to this lifestyle will actually bring up backup, or we'll call the restaurant ahead of time. We'll call, if we're eating at somebody's house, ahead of time and say, will you have enough vegetables for me? Because I'm not going to eat the pasta that you've made. This pasta is too triggering. And if they don't, well, do you mind if I bring some of my own? Like, you kind of plan ahead of time. That's really important with addiction because people most of the time relapse. In other words, pick up a little bit and then they're back, and they can be back for years. This is not like a simple relapse. Sometimes it's because they weren't prepared. They didn't plan. So that's a super important one. And then, as we've already alluded to, don't think about the weight. Don't think about the weight, because if you're thinking about, oh my God, I can't eat these vegetables because I'll gain weight. If you're just counting calories and you're looking at the weight, you're gonna miss out on all the hidden sugars, all the hidden triggers.
Yes.
You're not going to think that they're as important because you're eating less. I actually ate almost half less calories than I do now, and I weighed more, 100 pounds. It's not about the calories. But the good news is, I'll just end this question by saying the good news is the weight will come off. It will. If it's unless you're trying to be much thinner than you should be, like because of cosmetic reasons, or because you're a fashion person, you will lose the weight that your body was. You'll be at the weight that you should be, and that's a body mass index that's usually appropriate. It will just happen, not right away. It might take a year, but it will happen.
Yes, yes. But I think it's very important to just keep on reminding ourselves that it's really not about how you look like. It's not about the scales. It's not about the numbers. That's a side, I always say, like, it's the side effect of actually getting healthy and clearing yourself from addiction to sugar, and actually allowing ourselves, have that freedom in your body. Because as if we're addicted, we really don't have the freedom. We are chained to having spent our life eating stuff that's really unhealthy and really harmful to us.
Exactly. And the name of your summit is called, Thrive in Your Body. You will not be thriving in your body. You'll be feeling deprived and hungry because you're counting calories. You'll feel miserable. You'll be thinking, as soon as this diet is over, I can eat whatever I want. If you follow a food addiction plan, you will actually feel not deprived and really enjoy the healthy food that you're eating. Like, it'll be like, I'm looking forward to my food.
Yes, exactly. So again, we're bringing food as, if food is beautiful, it sustains our life. We need it. We can love it and we can enjoy it. But we don't have to be addicted to it, and we can make the right choices.
Exactly.
And so you have, like, what is the best food plan that a person can follow if they're watching?
Okay, so basically the best food plan is any plan, as long as it doesn't have refined carbohydrates or industrial foods. If you can eat what we call real food, there's a term that's called JERF, just eat real food. Perfect. So you can be a vegetarian, you can be a keto or a low carb, or just a regular, eating maybe a cuisine like Indian food or something like that, or Chinese food, or some of them you have to watch because they put sugar even in the vegetables. That's the danger of going to restaurants. You always have to check ahead of time. But it doesn't matter what the plan is, as long as you cut out the refined toxic foods. Because remember, the industry is making food, even like a dinner, like you go to the deli and get a dinner for the night. There's going to be sugar in that because they want you to buy it over another product, because it's flavor enhancing. So they put a lot of salt in it, more fat than is necessary, and more sugar than is. We don't need to put sugar in, because vegetables are naturally. But if you're saying, but that's still not good enough, I don't know what to do, then I would say the shortest cut, but I'm not saying it's the only plan, would be a keto plan, or a keto or a low carb, because what they're doing is saying, let's just get rid of the whole carbohydrate dilemma, because sugar is only in carbohydrates. Let's just avoid carbohydrates, and then we've got a sugar-free plan. So if you want something like a menu or something, you don't want to think about it, go to one of the keto sites or low carb sites, and you'll get something that's essentially food addiction friendly. Except, I will add this, don't go for their bombs or their little desserts and stuff like that, because that's where the food industry has snuck in and said, add a little sweetener and add a little bit of this kind of flour, that's okay. And then you end up having another. It may not be as addictive as your regular cake in the grocery store, but it's still addictive, and it trips up a lot of people who are on keto.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that, because these days we have like whole aisles of like keto foods, and these are all processed, pre-made foods. You have your ice cream, your chocolate, your everything, but it's sort of going back into the same mentality of like, I have to have that. And it's sort of making you feel like you're having sugar, and it probably has substances to it that are actually addictive. So I think it's very important, to stick to real food instead of, now substituting another processed stuff and putting that in our body.
Atkins from years ago, 70s or 80s, whenever he was around, he was on the right track because he was talking about carbohydrates. But even his system ended up failing because they had those Atkins bars. And even then the food industry got in, and then it kind of blew up in his face. Like, the newer version of Atkins now is keto, and they were doing really well. Like keto is premised on the idea that our bodies were not meant to be for processed foods. But you don't have keto bars growing on trees or animals. It's the processed
Right.
food industry that's kind of ruined that concept.
Yes, yes. So think about what is, yeah, what's growing out there in nature and eat that.
Yes,
So remember, those plastic wrapped things that we buy are not growing out on trees
exactly.
or in nature. So that's a great way to discern what's right. So is there something that we haven't spoke about today, Dr. Tarman, that you really wanted to bring?
Well, other than just how to get a hold of me, I'd like to leave on a message of hope that if you're listening and you're struggling with your weight, and as you try to adjust weight, you're just miserable because you've been on diets and they don't work, whatever. That if you can identify with anything that I've said, try to take a food addiction approach for even 1 month. That's why we have a lot of sugar-free challenges that are only a month. Because if you do the whole thing, you're going to be convinced at the end to continue. But at least try, and you'll find that not only will you lose weight, even in that month, but you'll also feel better. Like you won't be wanting that stuff. It won't be obsessed in your mind the whole day as it may be now. So you're going to win. You're going to win on both counts.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And you're going to feel good. It's not like you're going to be feeling miserable and deprived.
Yeah, like you're putting a time limiter. I'm just going to do it for 30 days.
Yeah.
And you can do anything for 30 days. And then, we'll see later. But
Exactly.
you'll find that your body will actually change and become healthier and
Yes.
actually ask you for better stuff. It's
Yes.
almost like then the sugar is really not that appealing anymore. So, and you have a free gift for our viewers,
I
right?
do.
Can you
Yes,
tell
I
us
do.
more?
So if you well, the free gift is essentially I have a couple of lectures that talk about both the biology of addiction and also the biology of recovery. And that I've been alluding to some concepts like dopamine and endorphins. It talks about that stuff in a quite. I mean, if you found my talk understandable now, you'll find that lecture understandable. So it's basically a 2 hour, two videos of both about an hour and a half long that are quite understandable, like PowerPoint videos. Yeah.
Okay, great. We're going to share it, or we already are sharing that via email with everybody. So please check that out, or you can text. I just posted in the comments. You can text Vera to 740-908-8425. You're going to get it right on your phone. But also, what is the way that people can connect with you and actually get on the challenges and start changing their addiction?
You mentioned my website, addictionsunplugged.com, but I actually am much more present now. I have a YouTube channel as well, which has a lot of my talks, various talks. Mainly, though, it's my Facebook group. So please join that. It's free. It's called I'm Sweet Enough, Sugar Free for Life. Please join that. And if we post challenges, you can get counselors there if you're interested. There's free groups there. It's a wonderful resource. And it's also a very friendly place. And then, of course, please buy my book, Food Junkies, Recovery from Food Addiction. And finally, I also have a podcast called Food Junkies, where we interview a lot of notable people in the food addiction field every week. And it's I think it's a good podcast. So there's lots of ways to get this information.
Beautiful. Yes, I just posted some of that information in the chat. So please get a hold of Dr. Vera Tarman if you want to get on that journey of getting rid of addictions, because unfortunately most of us, I think, to be honest, like most of us are addicted to food or have been addicted to food because this is the society and this is the environment that we live in. And it's not our fault. It's just how our body responds to what's happening, and so we got to take steps and be leaders in our lives and in our health. Beautiful.
Great summary.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tarman. It was a pleasure to speak with you, and I appreciate your work and how much you're helping people. And thank you, everybody, for coming on the show. Please take advantage of the free gift and connect with Dr. Vera Tarman, and come back again to watch more of our videos and interviews here on the summit. So pleasure to speak with you, Dr. Tarman, and a pleasure to see everybody. We'll see you back soon. Thank you.
Thank you.